The morning sky over New York City turned purple at exactly 7:42 a.m. on a Tuesday in late September. Linda Hayes was drinking her second cup of coffee aboard the aircraft carrier USS Defiance when the first reports came flooding in. Ships, hundreds of them, descending through the clouds like metal locusts. She dropped her coffee and ran to the bridge. The Velnorx Dominion had traveled 4,000 light years to claim Earth. Their high commander, a 7-foot reptilian creature named Zorith, broadcast his message on every television, radio, and phone on the planet. His voice was cold and mechanical through the translator. People of Earth, you have 7 of your days to surrender completely. Your world now belongs to the Velnorx Dominion by right of conquest. Your people will serve us in our mining colonies. Resist, and you will be destroyed. This is not a negotiation, world leaders scrambled to respond. Emergency meetings happened across the globe. The United Nations assembled in record time. Military forces went to their highest alert levels. But what could they do? These aliens had crossed the stars. Earth's most advanced weapons were toys compared to what hung in the sky above them. Linda Hayes had served in the Navy for 23 years. She had seen combat in 3 different wars. Nothing had prepared her for this. Through her binoculars, she watched the alien ships move into position over major cities. They were massive, each one larger than any structure humans had ever built. The bombardment began at noon. Zorith did not wait 7 days. He had given that deadline knowing full well he would not honor it. The Dominion had conquered over 200 species across the galaxy. They had learned that quick. Overwhelming violence broke the spirit of resistance faster than any siege. Beams of blue plasma fell from the sky like rain. Los Angeles was the first to burn. Then Shanghai. Then London. Then Cairo. 18 million people died in the first 60 minutes. The death toll climbed every second. Earth fought back with everything it had. Fighter jets scrambled from every airfield. Missiles launched from submarines and ground installations. Tanks and artillery fired at the ships hovering over their cities. None of it worked. The alien shields absorbed every attack without a flicker. Linda watched a squadron of F-35s dissolve into vapor as they approached a Velnorx cruiser. The pilots never had a chance. She felt sick to her stomach, but she forced herself to keep watching. Someone had to witness this. Someone had to remember in a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Different kind of battle was being fought. Dr. Kevin Park had been studying theoretical physics at Caltech for 15 years. His specialty was exotic energy fields. His colleagues had called his research impractical. Now the fate of humanity rested on his shoulders. Shields operate on a harmonic frequency, he explained to the generals gathered around him. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. Every energy barrier has a resonance point. If we can hit that point with enough force, the shields will collapse. General Martinez stared at him. Doctor, we have hit those ships with everything we have. Nothing penetrates. One weapon does not penetrate, Kevin corrected. But what about 7,000 weapons detonating in a precise sequence? The cumulative harmonic disruption could overwhelm their systems. Their shields would drop for maybe 10-15 seconds. The room went silent. You want us to launch our entire nuclear arsenal at once? Martinez said slowly. Kevin nodded. Every warhead, timed to the millisecond. It is the only way. The president made the decision within the hour. Maria Gonzalez had been a senator from Texas before the election. She had never imagined she would be the one to authorize nuclear war. But this was not war as humans understood it. This was survival. Do it, she ordered. The next 2 days were a nightmare of preparation. While cities burned and millions died, technicians worked without sleep to reprogram every nuclear weapon on Earth. Kevin and his team calculated the precise detonation sequence that would create the harmonic cascade they needed. One mistake, one wrong timing, and the entire plan would fail. Linda Hayes coordinated naval operations from the Defiance. The carrier had survived by staying mobile, never remaining in one place long enough for the Velnorx to target it. She watched the death toll climb past 100 million. She watched entire nations go dark as their infrastructure collapsed. She also watched something else, something the aliens had not expected. Humans were not surrendering in every country. On every continent, people were fighting. They fought with guns and knives and rocks. They died by the thousands, but they kept fighting. Factory workers sabotaged the roads leading to assembly areas where the Dominion expected slaves to gather. Farmers burned their crops rather than let them feed the invaders. Ordinary people, with no military training, picked up weapons and formed resistance cells. Zorth was confused by this behavior. Every other species had broken within hours of the bombardment. Why were these primitives still resisting? Did they not understand they had already lost? On the morning of the third day, Earth's counterattack began. 7,000 nuclear warheads launched simultaneously from every corner of the planet. They rose through the atmosphere like an angry swarm, climbing toward the alien fleet. Velnoric sensors detected them immediately. Primitive nuclear weapons, one of Zorath's officers reported. No threat to our shields. Zorath nodded. He had seen this before. The desperate final strike of a dying world. He ordered his ships to maintain position and continue the bombardment. The warheads reached their targets and began detonating. At first, nothing happened. Velnoric's shields flickered slightly but held firm. Officers on the command ship began to laugh. These humans were even more foolish than they had believed. Then the harmonic cascade hit. Kevin had calculated perfectly. The precisely timed detonations created a wave of disruption that built upon itself, growing stronger with each explosion. Shield generators across the Dominion fleet began to overload. Warning alarms screamed. Engineers scrambled to compensate. They were too late. The shields collapsed for exactly 14 seconds. In those 14 seconds, over 4,000 nuclear weapons found their targets. The sky above Earth turned white with fire. 237 Velnorix warships vanished in an instant. Linda Hayes watched from the bridge of the Defiance. She felt the heat of the explosions even from miles away. She saw the wreckage of alien ships falling like meteors into the ocean. She saw something she had never expected to see again. Hope the surviving Velnoric ships retreated beyond the moon. Their proud fleet of 300 had been reduced to 63 damaged vessels. Zorath stood on his bridge, surrounded by the bodies of officers killed, when secondary explosions rocked his flagship. He sent a single message. Back to Dominion space. Reinforcements required. These creatures are more dangerous than anticipated. On Earth, the survivors emerged from bunkers and shelters. They looked up at a sky that was still filled with smoke and fire and death. But the alien ships were gone, at least for now. President Gonzalez addressed the world from an underground command center. Her face was tired but determined. They thought we would surrender, she said. They were wrong. They will come back with more ships. They will try to finish what they started. But we are not done fighting. We are just getting started.
Oh.
Linda Hayes listened to the broadcast on the Defiance's radio. Around her, sailors who had not slept in 3 days were already preparing for the next phase. They were battered and exhausted and terrified, but they were alive. And they were angry. The Velnorix Dominion had made a terrible mistake. They had attacked a species that had spent its entire history fighting against impossible odds. Now that species was united for the first time ever, the single purpose, survival, and revenge. The first year after the invasion was the hardest humanity had ever faced. 4 billion people had survived. That meant 4 billion had died. Entire cities were gone, reduced to glass craters by plasma bombardment. The global economy had collapsed completely. Money meant nothing now. Food, water, medicine, and shelter were the only currencies that mattered. But humans did something remarkable in those dark months. Something that had never happened before in their long and violent history. They came together. The United Earth Defense Coalition formed 6 months after the invasion. Every surviving nation signed the charter. Old enemies stood side by side. Americans worked with Russians. Chinese engineers shared blueprints with Japanese factories. Indian scientists collaborated with Pakistani researchers. The petty conflicts that had divided humanity for centuries seemed foolish now. There was only one enemy that mattered. Admiral Linda Hayes took command of fleet operations. She had spent the months after the battle coordinating rescue efforts and refugee movements. Now she had a different job. Building a fleet that could fight among the stars. Cannot wait for them to come back, she told the coalition leadership. We know they are gathering more ships. We know they will return. When they do, we need to meet them on our terms, not theirs.
The first step was understanding the enemy.
Salvage teams spread across the planet, picking through the wreckage of crashed Velnorix ships. Every piece of alien technology was photographed, catalogued, and sent to research facilities. Scientists worked around the clock to unlock the secrets hidden in that twisted metal. Dr. Kevin Park led the reverse engineering effort. He had saved humanity once with his shield harmonic theory. Now he was trying to give humanity the stars. Their faster-than-light drive uses something called an Alcubierre field. He explained to a room full of engineers. We theorized about this decades ago, but we never figured out how to stabilize it. The Velnorix solved that problem using exotic matter generated in a controlled reaction. We can copy their design. How long? Admiral Hayes asked. Kevin paused. 18 months to build a prototype. Maybe 12 if we push hard. Push hard, she ordered. The shipyard was built in Texas, on the grounds of a former SpaceX facility. Workers arrived from every corner of the world. They slept in tents and worked 16-hour shifts. Food was rationed. Luxuries were non-existent. Nobody complained. Everyone had lost someone in the invasion. Everyone had a reason to fight. Daniel Cruz was one of those workers. He had been a Navy pilot before the invasion. Stationed in San Diego, his wife and 2 daughters had died in the Los Angeles bombardment. He had nothing left to live for except the chance to kill the creatures that had taken everything from him. He was assigned to the construction team building the engine housing. It was brutal physical labor, welding and cutting and hauling heavy equipment in the Texas heat. But Daniel threw himself into the work. Every bolt he tightened was a small act of revenge. After 3 months, he was promoted to test pilot. The coalition needed people with flight experience to test the new ships they were building. Daniel volunteered immediately. The pay was the same, meaning nothing. The food was the same, meaning barely enough. But the risk was much higher. He did not care about risk anymore. The first human. Starship rolled out of the hangar on a cold morning in March. She was ugly. There is no other word for it. She was a blocky, ungraceful vessel made of welded steel plates and salvaged alien components. Her hull was painted flat gray. Her name stenciled in white letters near the bow was Horizon. Admiral Hayes attended the launch ceremony. She stood on a platform overlooking the ship and spoke to the assembled workers and crew. 1 year ago, we were victims, she said. We were prey. We watched our world burn and we could do nothing to stop it. Today, that changes. Today, we become hunters. It was the first real celebration humanity had allowed itself since the invasion. Daniel Cruz sat in the pilot's seat as Horizon lifted off. The ship shuddered and groaned, every rivet protesting against the stress of atmospheric exit. Warning lights flickered across his console. The engines ran hot, way too hot. But she flew. Horizon reached orbit in 14 minutes. Daniel looked down at Earth through the cockpit window. He could still see the scars. Dark patches where cities used to be. Smoke still rising from fires that had burned for a year. Clouds twisted by the lingering effects of nuclear winter. Horizon 2 control, he said into his radio. We have achieved stable orbit. Beginning FTL system activation. The Alcubierre drive hummed to life. Space itself bent around the ship. And then, in a flash of distorted light, Horizon jumped. She reappeared near the moon 3 seconds later. The jump had covered a distance that would have taken conventional ships days to travel. Daniel felt tears on his cheeks. He did not bother to wipe them away. Control, this is Horizon. FTL jump successful. We have done it. We have actually done it. The celebration at Mission Control lasted for hours. Dr. Kevin Park collapsed in exhaustion and had to be carried to medical. Admiral Hayes allowed herself a single glass of whiskey. Her first drink since before the invasion, but the work was far from over. Horizon proved that humans could travel faster than light. Now they needed ships that could fight. Over the next few months, the shipyard produced a steady stream of vessels. They were warships, armed with a combination of human missiles and captured Velnoric's plasma weapons. Daniel Cruz was promoted to commander and given his own ship, a heavy cruiser named Redemption. He trained his crew relentlessly, drilling them on combat maneuvers and weapon systems until they could fight in their sleep. Admiral Hayes called him to a briefing 6 months after Horizon's first flight. She showed him something that made his heart race. Star charts. "We captured a Velnoric scout last week," she explained. "Their navigation database was intact. We now know the location of every Dominion outpost within 50 light years. We know their trade routes, their military bases, their homeworld." Daniel stared at the holographic map floating above the table. All those stars, all those targets, also found something else, Hayes continued. The location of something called the Galactic Council. It appears the Velnorics are just one member of a larger alliance. This council sanctioned the attack on Earth. They treat it like a routine conquest. "How many species are in this council?" Daniel asked. "They have ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They have conquered hundreds of worlds." Hayes paused. "They have never lost a war." Daniel smiled for the first time in months. It was not a pleasant smile. "Then I guess we will have to be the first." Admiral Hayes nodded. "Exactly. We are not going to sit here and wait for them to attack again. We are taking the fight to them, and we are going to show this Galactic Council why humanity should never have been attacked." The fleet gathered near Jupiter. 212 ships, the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. They were crewed by men and women who had lost everything, soldiers who had nothing left but anger and determination. Daniel Cruz stood on the Bridge of Redemption and addressed his crew. "We all know why we are here," he said. "We have all lost people we loved. We have all seen our world burn. Now we are going to make them pay. Not because we want revenge, although we do, but because if we do not stop them, they will come back and finish what they started. This is not just about the past. This is about making sure humanity has a future." The fleet jumped together. 200 ships, vanishing into faster-than-light travel and perfect formation. Earth was behind them. The stars waited ahead. The Velnoric's border system of Kareth 7 had been quiet for 200 years. It was a mining colony, far from any conflict, used to extract rare metals from the system's asteroid belt. The garrison commander, a board officer named Velthos, spent most of his days reviewing cargo, manifests, and disciplining lazy workers. He was drinking his morning nutrient solution when the sensors screamed. 212 contacts, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. Unknown configuration, unknown origin. Velthos dropped his glass and ran to the command center. His officers were already at their stations, staring at the display screens in disbelief. "What are they?" he demanded. "Unknown, Commander. They do not match any registered species in our database. They are broadcasting on an open frequency. Put it through." A human voice filled the room. Female, calm, cold. "Velnoric's garrison. This is Commander Sophia Martin of the United Earth Defense Coalition. Your species attacked our world 18 months ago. You killed 4 billion of our people. We are here to return the favor." Velthos felt his scales go pale. Earth. The primitives from Earth. The ones who had somehow destroyed most of the invasion fleet. They were supposed to be contained, broken, dying. They were not supposed to be here. "All ships, defensive formation," he shouted. "Protect the mining colony." His 60 vessels formed a protective sphere around the colony. It was standard doctrine. Hold position, absorb the enemy assault, wait for reinforcements. The humans did not follow standard doctrine, Sophia. Martin had been a Marine captain before the invasion. She had survived the bombardment of Seattle by hiding in a basement for 6 days while the city burned around her. Her husband had died on the first day. Her son on the third. She had crawled out of the rubble with nothing but hatred keeping her alive. Now she commanded the battleship Vengeance, the most powerful ship in the human fleet. All ships, attack pattern Delta, she ordered. Break their formation and destroy everything that shoots back. The human fleet surged forward like a swarm of angry hornets. They did not move like other species. They did not maintain neat formations or proper spacing. They attacked in waves, groups of ships targeting single enemies and overwhelming them with concentrated fire. Velthus watched in horror as his vessels began to explode. The humans fought like demons. They took terrible damage but kept coming. One human destroyer, its engines failing and hull breached in a dozen places, simply aimed itself at a Velnorx cruiser and accelerated. Both ships died together. "They are insane," one of his officers whispered. "They do not care if they die." "No," Velthos replied slowly. "They care. They just hate us more than they fear death." The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, the Velnorx garrison had been completely destroyed. 47 human ships had been lost, but the remaining 165 owned the system. Sophia Martin ordered the fleet to hold position while the ground assault began. Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Hughes led the Marine landing force. She was 42 years old, a career soldier from Georgia who had lost her entire extended family in the Atlanta bombardment. Her powered armor was painted with tally marks. Each mark represented a Velnorx she had personally killed. There were already 17 marks. The Marines landed at the main colony complex, a sprawling industrial facility built into the largest asteroid. They expected fierce resistance. What they found was something very different. Slaves, thousands of them. Aliens of species the humans had never seen before. They were chained together in work gangs, their bodies thin and covered in scars. They looked up at the armored humans with eyes full of terror. Patricia raised her hand and ordered her troops to hold fire. She walked forward slowly, removing her helmet so the slaves could see her face. "We are not here to hurt you," she said through her translator. "We are here to free you." The slaves did not understand at first. The concept of freedom was foreign to them. They had been born in chains, like their parents and grandparents before them. The Velnorx had ruled them for generations. The idea that someone would come to rescue them was beyond belief. An elder of the Tessari, aquatic species with blue-green skin and large dark eyes, approached Patricia. He moved carefully, expecting to be struck at any moment. "You are the Earthlings," he said. His voice was like water flowing over stones. "We heard stories. They said you fought back. They said you killed many Velnorix." "We did," Patricia confirmed. "And we are going to kill more. But first, we are going to get you out of here." The elder trembled. "Why? We are nothing. We have nothing to offer you. Why would you risk your lives for us?" Patricia thought about her family, her mother, her father, her 2 brothers, and their children. All gone. All dead because the Velnorix viewed humanity as nothing more than raw materials to be harvested. "Because no one should be nothing," she said. "Because everyone deserves to be free." The liberation of Kara 7 took 3 days. Human engineers worked alongside former slaves to disable the Velnorix control systems. Medical teams treated workers who had never seen a doctor in their lives. Soldiers distributed food from captured warehouses. News of the liberation spread through the Galactic Council's communication networks faster than light. Every enslaved species heard the story. The Earthlings had come. They had destroyed the garrison. They had freed the workers. And they were coming for more. The council convened an emergency session. Ambassador Threx of the Velnorix Dominion stood before the assembled. Representatives of 12 species. His scales were dark with anger. "These creatures are a plague," he declared. "They must be exterminated immediately. We demand a full military response from all council members." Other voices were less certain. The prelate of the Kasani, a graceful feline species conquered 3,000 years ago, rose to speak. Perhaps we should consider why these humans fight so effectively, she said. They were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be easy prey. Instead, they have humiliated the Dominion and inspired rebellion among our labor populations. Perhaps the problem is not the humans. Perhaps the problem is us, Threx hissed with fury. You dare question the Council's methods? Your species exists because we allow it. My species exists because we had no choice, the prelate replied calmly. But now there is a choice. The humans have shown that resistance is possible. Do you think our people have not noticed? The debate raged for hours. In the end, the vote was close, but the outcome was clear. The Council would assemble a combined fleet to destroy humanity once and for all. 800 ships from 12 species. The largest military force the Council had deployed in centuries, back at Kareth 7. Sophia Martin received the intelligence report from captured Velnorix officers. She called Commander Daniel Cruz to her quarters aboard the Vengeance. They are coming, she said, showing him the data. 800 ships. They will reach Earth in approximately 6 months. Daniel studied the numbers. We have maybe 300 ships if we push production to the limit. We cannot win a straight fight. No, Sophia agreed. We cannot. But Admiral Hayes has a plan. We are not going to fight alone. What do you mean? Sophia smiled grimly. Look around this system, Daniel. Look at the people we freed. The Tisari, the Maradi, the Kethani. All of them have been slaves for generations. All of them hate the Council just as much as we do. Daniel began to understand. We build an alliance. We build an army, Sophia corrected. An army of everyone the Council ever crushed. Every species they enslaved, every world they burned. We offer them something the Council never did. What? Sophia looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, a fleet was gathering to destroy her people. Somewhere out there, billions of beings lived in chains. Hope, she said. We offer them hope. The next phase of the war would not be fought with weapons alone. It would be fought with words. With promises, with the radical idea that freedom was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Humanity had struck back. Now it was time to build something bigger than revenge. It was time to start a revolution, Admiral. Linda Hayes had not slept more than 4 hours a night since the invasion. She had forgotten what rest felt like. She had forgotten what peace felt like. All she knew now was war. The intelligence report sat on her desk like a death sentence. 800 Council ships. 6 months until they reached Earth. Her fleet had 300 vessels. And many of those were barely space-worthy. The math was simple. Humanity was going to lose. Unless she changed the math. We need allies, she told her command staff. Real allies. Not just freed slaves who are grateful. We need species who will fight beside us. Ambassador Claire Dawson stepped forward. She had been a State Department negotiator before the invasion, specializing in impossible diplomatic situations. Now she was humanity's chief diplomat to species that had never heard of Earth until recently. I have been studying the Council's structure, Claire said. They rule through fear, not loyalty. Their member species joined because they had no choice. Many of them remember what freedom was like. If we can offer them a real chance at victory, some might switch sides. And if they refuse, Hayes asked, then we free their slaves anyway. Every worker we liberate is one less resource for the Council. Every act of rebellion spreads hope. As Hayes nodded. Do it. Take whatever ships you need. Visit every subjugated world you can reach. Make them understand that the Council is not invincible. Claire left Earth 2 days later aboard a small diplomatic vessel. Her first stop was the Kethani homeworld, a jungle planet called Veth Prime. The Kethani were an insectoid species, conquered 2 centuries ago and reduced to factory labor for the Dominion. Their planetary overseer, fat Velnorix named Greth, refused to even meet with her, so Claire went around. She landed at one of the massive hive factories that covered the planet's surface. Kethani workers swarmed around her ship, curious about the strange alien who had appeared without warning. Security drones moved to intercept her, but Claire had already begun broadcasting on all frequencies. People of Veth Prime, My name is Claire Dawson. I represent the human species of Earth. The Velnorix attacked my world 2 years ago. They killed 4 billion of us. They expected us to surrender. She paused, letting the words sink in. We did not surrender. We fought back. We destroyed their fleet. And now we are here, offering you the same choice. You can remain slaves forever. Or you can stand with us and fight for your freedom. Da-da-da! The broadcast reached every hive on the planet. Within hours, riots broke out at 3 major facilities. The Cathani had never forgotten their warrior past. They had simply been waiting for a reason to remember it. Elder Chitrix, the oldest and most respected of the Cathani queens, summoned Claire to her chambers. She was massive, her body filling most of the room, her compound eyes glittering with ancient intelligence. You are either very brave or very foolish, Chitrix said through a translator device. The council will destroy you. They have ruled for 10,000 years. What makes you think you can defeat them? Claire did not hesitate. Because we have nothing to lose. My people watched our world burn. We crawled out of the ashes and built a fleet from wreckage. We are not fighting because we think we can win. We are fighting because the alternative is extinction. Chitrix was silent for a long moment. Her mandibles clicked in what the translator rendered as contemplation. The old songs speak of a time before the Dominion, she finally said. A time when the Cathani flew between stars on ships of our own making, a time when we were free. The council forbade those songs. They burned the records of our history. But we remember. We have always remembered. Then help us make new history, Claire urged. Help us tear down the council and build something better. And if we lose? Claire looked the ancient queen directly in her many eyes. Then we die free. Is that not better than living as slaves? Chitrix made a sound that might have been laughter. You humans are strange creatures. Very well, the Cathani will join your alliance. Our factories will build ships for your fleet. Our warriors will fight beside yours. But know this, if you betray us, if this is some trick, we will turn on you faster than you can imagine. Fair enough, Claire said. The Cathani were just the beginning. Over the next 4 months, Claire visited 11 different worlds. She spoke to the Tessari, the aquatic navigators whose knowledge of hyperspace currents was unmatched. She negotiated with the Marathi, a warrior species reduced to gladiatorial entertainment for their council masters. She made promises to the Krellin, the Vorix, the Dathane, and half a dozen others. Not everyone said yes. Some species were too afraid. Some had been so thoroughly broken that they could not imagine fighting back. But enough said yes. The coalition fleet grew. Cathani factory ships joined human cruisers. Tessari navigators guided the fleet through uncharted hyperspace routes. Marathi warriors, freed from their arena chains, trained with human marines. Admiral Hayes watched the numbers climb. 300 ships became 400. 400 became 500. It is still not enough, she told Dr. Kevin Park. We are outnumbered almost 2 to 1. Kevin smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. I might have a solution for that. He led her to a secure research facility in Colorado, buried deep beneath the mountains. Security was intense. Armed guards stood at every door. Biometric scanners checked their identities 3 times before they reached the central laboratory. In the middle of the room sat a device. It was small, barely larger than a refrigerator, but Hayes could feel power radiating from it. The air seemed to bend around it. Call it Project Prometheus, Kevin explained. It generates controlled gravitational singularities, microscopic black holes that last for a fraction of a second before evaporating. But in that fraction of a second, they release incredible amounts of energy. Hayes stared at the device. What can it do to an enemy ship? In theory, it can crush a battleship like a paper cup. The gravitational forces are so intense that shields, armor, none of it matters. The ship simply collapses in on itself. In theory, Hayes repeated. What about in practice? Kevin's smile faded slightly. We have tested it exactly twice. Both tests were successful, but the power requirements are enormous. We can only fire it a few times before the systems need to recharge. And there is a chance, maybe 15%, that the singularity does not collapse properly. What happens then? Then the singularity keeps growing. It would consume the ship carrying the weapon, and probably everything within 100 kilometers. Hayes considered this for a long moment. A weapon that could destroy any enemy ship. A weapon that might destroy them instead. A gamble with the highest possible stakes. Install it on the Vengeance, she ordered. If we are going to risk everything, we might as well risk it on our best ship. Commander Sophia Martin accepted the assignment without hesitation. Her crew understood what it meant. They might save humanity. They might die in a ball of compressed matter. Either way, they would make history. The Council fleet was 3 weeks away when the Coalition gathered near Earth. 500 ships from 8 different species hung in formation around the moon. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Many of them would not survive the coming battle, but they were not afraid. Admiral Hayes broadcast to every ship in the fleet: Human, Kethany, Tesseri, Marathi, and all the others. Her voice carried across the void of space. "We have all lost something to the Council," she said. "Our homes, our families, our freedom. Today we take it back. Today we show them that the galaxy is not theirs to rule. Today we fight not just for survival, but for the right of every species to determine its own destiny." She paused, letting the words echo. "They are coming to destroy us. Let them come. Let them see what free beings can do when they have nothing left to lose." The fleet roared its approval across 1,000 communication channels. The Council Armada merged from hyperspace exactly on schedule. 800 warships, the combined might of 12 species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They outnumbered the defenders. They outgunned them. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Battle of Earth had begun. Admiral Koroth of the Velnorix Dominion surveyed the Coalition fleet from his command bridge. His flagship, the Eternal Conquest, was the largest warship in the Council Armada. He had commanded fleets for 300 years. He had crushed rebellions on 40 different worlds. These primitives did not concern him. "Signal all vessels," he ordered. "Standard extermination formation. Destroy them all. Leave no survivors." The Council fleet advanced in perfect formation. 800 ships moving as one, their combined firepower enough to crack a planet's surface. Against them stood 500 defenders. A ragged collection of human vessels, Kethany hive ships, Tesseri cruisers, and Marathi warcraft. Admiral Linda Hayes watched the enemy approach from her command center aboard the carrier Defiance. She had positioned herself at the rear of the formation, where she could coordinate the entire battle. Her tactical displays showed the overwhelming force heading toward them. "All ships hold formation," she ordered. "Let them come to us. Do not engage until they reach the firing line." The Coalition fleet waited. Seconds stretched into minutes. The Council Armada grew larger on their screens, filling the void of space with metal and death. Commander Daniel Cruz stood on the bridge of the Redemption. His crew was silent, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Some prayed. Some wrote final messages to loved ones. Some simply stared at the approaching doom. Daniel did none of these things. He just waited. The Council fleet reached weapons range and opened fire. Beams of plasma and volleys of missiles screamed across space. The first Coalition ships began to die, their hulls torn apart by concentrated firepower.
"Ow,"
Hayes ordered. The Coalition fleet scattered like a flock of birds, breaking their formation into 100 smaller groups. Each group targeted a different section of the Council Armada. Instead of one big battle, there were suddenly dozens of smaller engagements happening across the entire combat zone. The Council commanders were confused. This was not how battles were fought. This was chaos. They tried to reform their lines, but the Coalition ships were too fast. It's unpredictable. Daniel Cruz led his squadron directly into the heart of the Council formation. Redemption and her sister ships weaved between enemy vessels, firing at point-blank range where shields were weakest. Hard to port. Daniel shouted, "Target that cruiser's engine section." Redemption's weapons tore into a Council cruiser. The enemy ship's engines exploded, sending debris spinning through space. But another council vessel was already turning to engage them. Shields failing on starboard side, his tactical officer reported. We have hull breach. S on decks 5 through 8. Keep firing, Daniel ordered. Make them pay for every inch. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Coalition ships died by the dozens, but they took enemies with them. Kethany hive ships swarmed larger council vessels like angry insects, their small craft slipping through defensive fire to deliver killing blows. Marathi warriors launched boarding actions, storming onto enemy bridges and slaughtering crews in hand-to-hand combat, but it was not enough. The council fleet was simply too large. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The coalition was being pushed back slowly but inevitably. Admiral Hayes watched the casualty reports climb. 100 coalition ships destroyed, then 150, then 200. Admiral, her communications officer, said, "The Vengeance is requesting permission to deploy Project Prometheus." Hayes closed her eyes for a moment. This was the gamble they had prepared for. The weapon that could change everything, or destroy them. "Permission granted," she said. "Tell Commander Martin to fire when ready." Sophia Martin received the order on the bridge of the Vengeance. Her ship had been held in reserve, protected by a screen of escort vessels. Now she maneuvered toward the center of the battle, toward Admiral Koroth's flagship. "Charge the Prometheus array," she ordered. "Target the Eternal Conquest." Her weapons officer hesitated. "Commander, if the singularity does not collapse properly—" "I know the risks," Sophia cut him off. "We all know the risks. Fire the weapon." The Prometheus device hummed to life. Energy readings spiked across every sensor in the fleet. The Eternal Conquest detected the strange energy signature and attempted to evade. But it was too late. A beam of distorted space lanced from the Vengeance. It struck the Council flagship near the center of its hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the singularity formed. Admiral Koroth had exactly 2 seconds to realize what was happening before his ship collapsed around him. Metal screamed. Bulkheads crumpled. The massive flagship folded in on itself like paper being crushed in a fist, compressing into a ball of matter smaller than a human head. 3 nearby council ships were caught in the gravitational shockwave. They tumbled out of control, their hulls warped and twisted by forces no shield could stop. Silence fell across every bridge in both fleets. Sophia did not hesitate. Fire again. Target their command ships. The Prometheus device fired 3 more times. Each shot destroyed multiple vessels. The Council formation began to collapse as ships tried to flee the devastating weapon. "All ships," Admiral Hayes broadcast. "Full assault. Drive them out of our system." The coalition fleet surged forward. What had been a desperate defense became a relentless attack. Demoralized council ships broke and ran, their commanders more concerned with survival than victory. Koroth's successor, a young captain who had never seen real combat, attempted to rally the fleet. His ship was destroyed by a combined strike from 6 coalition vessels before he could finish giving orders. The battle turned into a rout. Council ships fled toward the hyperspace jump points, chased by coalition fighters and cruisers. Some escaped. Most did not. The void around Earth filled with wreckage and bodies and the dying screams of a defeated empire. When it was over, fewer than 200 council ships had survived. The coalition had lost over 300 vessels. They held the field. Earth was safe. Admiral Hayes allowed herself to feel relief for exactly 5 seconds. Then she was back to work, coordinating rescue operations and assessing damage reports. Daniel Cruz sat in the captain's chair of the Redemption. His ship was barely functional, held together by emergency patches and the desperate prayers of his engineering crew. Around him, his bridge officers were crying and laughing and hugging each other. They had survived. They had actually survived. The war did not end at the Battle of Earth. It took another 2 years to break the Council completely. Coalition forces liberated world after world, freeing billions of beings who had lived in chains for generations. Some Council species surrendered and were allowed to join the new alliance. Others fought to the bitter end and were destroyed. The Velnoric's dominion fell apart as their conquered subjects rose in rebellion across every system they had controlled. The final treaty was signed aboard a space station, called Unity, built in orbit around a world that had once been a Dominion slave colony. Representatives from 30 different species attended. Admiral Hayes signed for humanity. She was older now. Her hair had gone gray, and new lines marked her face. But her eyes were still sharp, still determined. "We did not start this war," she said as she affixed her signature to the document. "But we finished it." Ambassador Claire Dawson stood beside her. She had spent the last 2 years building diplomatic relationships across the galaxy, laying the foundation for a new order based on cooperation instead of conquest. "What happens now?" Claire asked. Hayes looked out the observation window. Ships from a dozen species hung in formation outside. Human vessels flew alongside Kethany hive ships and Tesseri cruisers. Marathi warriors served shoulder to shoulder with human marines. "Now we build something better," she said. "Something that lasts. It will not be easy. We are not all the same. We do not all want the same things. But we have proven something that the Council never believed was possible. Different species can work together. Freedom can win." Somewhere in the fleet, Daniel Cruz stood on the bridge of a new ship, larger and more powerful than the Redemption. He had been promoted to admiral after the battle. His officers were a mix of species, united by shared purpose instead of fear. He thought about his wife and daughters, dead now for almost 4 years. He thought about the Los Angeles morning when the sky had turned purple. He thought about every friend he had buried, every ship he had lost, every moment when he had been certain humanity was finished. They had been wrong. The Council had been wrong. Everyone who had ever looked at humanity and seen easy prey had been wrong. Earth had struck back, and the galaxy would never be the same. The last of the Council's enforcers were being transported to detention facilities. The last of the slave chains were being broken. The last of the old order was crumbling into dust, and in its place, something new was growing. An alliance of free species bound by choice instead of conquest. A future where no world would burn simply because it was weaker than its neighbors. It had cost billions of lives. It had nearly cost humanity everything. But they had won. Admiral Hayes looked at the stars spread out before her. So many worlds. So many possibilities. So much work still to be done, but for the first time in a long time, she smiled. The galaxy was ready for something new, and humanity was just getting started.